Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a lifelong journalist. I've produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, CNN, and many other media outlets. And I love meeting interesting people and asking thought-provoking questions. And on this podcast series, I have the pleasure of interviewing a great author, David Parker from San Francisco. David is the author of two great books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative, and has a book of essays coming up very, very soon. Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, Tom, I'm fine. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, sir. Very, very well. So I want to just jump right in. One issue, I'm always kind of a news junkie, especially a political news junkie. I got my start at CBS News in Washington, visiting the White House and Congress and so on. And so one topic that's back in the news again, it seems like it's been in the news for 10 years or more, maybe it's never gone away, is immigration. I know that there in the Bay Area, you live there, of course, in San Francisco, it's quite a melting pot and a lot of diversity, which I like personally. But it sounds like year after year, Congress has failed to enact a really workable immigration policy. And now the headlines at the moment are that things are really breaking down and the number of immigrants crossing the border is going to triple almost literally overnight. What do you make of the immigration situation?
Well, we need the people, this nation, or any dynamic economy like the U.S. economy. The Achilles heel of a dynamic economy is a labor shortage. China has a labor shortage. Mid-level management in China is getting higher and higher salaries, and they regret they had a one-child policy. And China may someday be just like Korea and Japan and us. The price of their products will be just as high as ours, and nobody will be going to China for that cheap product anymore. But do we live on the rule of law with some principles? China doesn't let people come in thousands per day, and they could probably use those people.
So are you holding China up as a model economy, in other words?
Well, a dynamic economy. They need people.
Yeah.
Japan needs people. They don't let people in.
What about exploitation of labor? Again, people coming up from Guatemala, Nicaragua, Cuba, and so on. It sounds like they're just so desperate to get away from the horrible conditions of their homelands. They'd be willing to accept any wage. Is there a risk of exploiting these people?
No, we need them. We're bidding. That's why American products cost so much. And Japanese and South Korean products cost a lot, and European products cost a lot, and China and India can undersell us easily. And so could Russia, but Russia is so unproductive. So we need all those people coming, but that doesn't mean you just have no borders. And there has to be some immigration policy. And the wall sounds ridiculous, but that's definitely a legitimate thought. Israel has problems with Palestinians sneaking in and blowing up school buses. So they have almost like a double wall, like a double hull for an oil tanker. And that works. Our border is huge, so it's kind of difficult, but it should be enforced. And maybe at the border, one immigration policy would be, we'll set up factories. I think there are some factories at the border anyway. I forget the word for that, maquiladora or something like that. So that if there's thousands and thousands of people coming, they come to work in factories at the border, and then they apply, and then we'll let them in on a normal application like anybody else. During World War II, Jews were fleeing Europe. We didn't let them in. We sent boats back, the famous St. Louis of the Havana, sent them back. So I have a strong feeling that one of the passengers was my great aunt. And she died in Auschwitz, but she was here, sent her back. So you're asking the wrong person. There has to be some law.
Yeah.
If you can't live by law, you have nothing.
Yeah. what's the situation with the tech firms there, in Silicon Valley in terms of immigrant labor and so on?
Right. We're talking principle. They were mad at Trump for lowering immigration. We're not hiring Americans. Then the education system is so bad we can't find an American. 71% of Silicon Valley are foreign born to this day. And that's the San Jose Mercury News. That's news. Go look that up. I didn't make it up. And we need people.
Yeah.
They're firing people left and right at the moment, but all that stuff is temporary.
Yeah.
I read today's a paper. San Francisco Business Times came out yesterday and said United Airlines in San Francisco is putting on 2,000 people. They're buying 50 or several hundred jets. They need people all over the place. So you have a dynamic economy.
Yeah.
We need people. We need people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I want to have a follow-up question for you. I just want to throw in real quick again, if for our viewers and listeners, we hope you're enjoying this episode of the San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series, and featuring David Parker and myself, Tom Martin. And if you are interested in checking out David's books, which are excellent, of course, please visit his website, davidparkeressays.com or amazon.com. And also, we'd love to hear from you. I mean, there are many schools of thought on this immigration topic and other topics we discuss. And so we'd love to hear from you. Either comment on our YouTube channel page or contact David through his website, davidparkeressays.com, or contact me through social media. But David, I just want to circle back a little bit. This immigration debate has been going on for years and years, and just kind of the lack of humanity of putting people in cages and little children. And they say, well, what do you do about the little children who, their parents come to this country illegally? They're illegal aliens, but the child is born here in the United States. Should they have a right to education and healthcare and so on? How is it that our government, our elected representatives have failed for so many years to put together a really sensible program?
Our politicians have failed in almost everything they do. We have the lowest public school system in the world for an advanced country. Unacceptable. Our healthcare is 2 or 3 times what it costs anywhere else in the world. So we have lax law enforcement, immigration, but then homeless in San Francisco and everywhere. Our politicians are doing almost nothing, and they run on saying they're going to do something. And I hate to say this, but that's why Donald Trump won in 2016. People held their nose and says, I don't want that man. But there was a consensus in the nation that neither political party had any intention of solving the problems that everyone cares about. Those 3 problems I just named. So they're not solving it. You have to solve immigration. The future is in Europe and here, a mass migration coming. And if we really have global warming in a serious way, you're going to expect millions and millions of people going north. Europe developed as a civilization because people left Africa. There was no more food, no lying food. People were starving, and they just started migrating out. In those days, hundreds of thousands. Today, it's going to be millions. We have to expect that. We have to have a policy for that.
Yeah.
Come to the border, and you can start working at the border in Mexico, and then you ask to come in, and maybe you start taking English lessons, and maybe you live there for a year and learn about America and learn what you expected, what you're not going to get, and you can tell us what skill you have. If you have no skill, maybe you can go to a trade school there. That would be a policy. That's the only policy I can see.
Yeah. So on the big issues, when, I'd like to still think that since we are a democracy, at least today, last time I checked, it's the voters can express themselves. And if they get tired of the polarized situation, right wing versus progressives and so on, and they say, we really need to put in place an effective immigration plan, like something, you just described. Is that the solution? I mean, does it always get back to the voters? I mean, that's where change really happens. It was interesting. I heard a commentary on CNN not long ago. One of their commentators, Fareed Zakaria, who has a very international perspective, said, America has always been kind of a nation of young upstarts. That's how we started to get away from England. And, look at the Vietnam War protests and so on. So change comes from the kind of the younger generation, like the status quo must change. And I just wonder if you think if that's an accurate assessment of our nation, and if you think that might offer some hope for the immigration program.
Well, we're not turning down people with an education, college grads who say, hey, I can make more money living in America. We're worried about people coming from the mountains of Guatemala who have no training and no education. They're coming in by the hundreds of thousands. Even that might be all right. The Italians that came 100 years ago, they didn't have education, coming from southern Italy. It's not the end of the world. People come here and they figure it out, and they're glad to be here, and they usually get into the system. But I'm in San Francisco, and San Francisco is called a sanctuary city, that we forbid the ICE to come into San Francisco and pick up people who are illegally here. And because we're Democrats. Mm-hmm. We have a liberal conservative split in this country, partially on immigration. That's going to backfire on the Democrats. The Democrats are saying, yeah, we want them coming in. These are our votes. We're a 50-50 tie. Let's bring in 1 million people. The Democrats said if their skin color is a little darker than white, they're going to vote Democrat. But that's going to really backfire. The Democratic Party maybe find its way on the way out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think of the
Democratic Party is not going to have. They'll have lost the House, they'll have lost the Senate, they'll have lost the presidency, and the Supreme Court may be 109 Republicans on there. That's in the next 30 years. I'm predicting that.
Amazing. Well, it's so many things up in the air at the moment. It's certainly stimulating to watch them and see what's going to happen next. But I think we're out of time for today. I want to thank you for your time, David. And again, for our viewers and listeners, be sure to visit David's website, davidparkeressays.com, where you can find copies of his books, Income and Wealth and the San Francisco Conservative. That's also a great place to share your comments, or you can go to our YouTube channel, A San Francisco Conservative, the podcast is where you find our YouTube channel, and you can post a comment there, or you can also purchase copies of these great books on Amazon. So, David, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Oh, one closing thought is that we're discussing an issue right now, immigration. It's not a new issue. And this, I think part of the strength of my book is that I discuss issues current issues as they've been in the past. And there were 3 periods of time that were much higher as a civilization development than we are. 5th century Athens is probably the greatest in history of mankind. 1st century Rome developed law, and 18th century Age of Enlightenment developed the notion of social, political, and economic freedom that our Constitution is right out of that. Our discussion today is on a very, very low level, and it's completely lacking in principle. The Constitution is 1 page. We just can't even abide by it. So I'm giving historic examples of the problems of the day. And as a person successful in business, very successful, I give entrepreneurial insight into all issues and economic insight into all issues.
Yeah, I love that. The great qualities of both books. I've learned a lot. I think so many of our readers, your readers, can benefit as well. So thanks again, and I look forward to the next time.
Great, Tom. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.